Welcome to the 10inaRow Celtic Show. My name is Graham Wilson. Joining me as always, my brother from another mother and father, the green and white writer himself, Mr. Paul Larkin. How are you, Paul?
Good morning, good evening, good night.
That's a lovely greeting from you this evening. You sound like you're in good spirits.
Well, you never know when these people are listening to these things. I don't even know what time it is. I'm sure they don't.
That's very, very true. And speaking of so many people listening, it seems as though we're getting a good response so far from the first two 10inaRow Celtic shows. The word seems to be getting out.
Mm-hmm.
And we also got some good feedback from the lovely, talented Prolific as well, which was a huge relief to me.
Yes, she's easily touched.
Absolutely. Well, speak for yourself. So, welcome once again. Here is the layout of the show. First off, if you're in the company of underage Tims, turn off the show now and listen back later, because after all, this is a show starring the great Paul Larkin and myself. So, adult situations are likely to be discussed, and there's probably going to be some sweary words. So, there's the disclaimer. But the mechanics of the show, here it is. 10 topics, 5 minutes to debate, discuss, and reflect on each. And at the end of those 5 minutes, you will hear what is now deemed to be a klaxon. So that is our indication that it is time to move on to the next topic. And
someone that could follow you in real life, Graham.
Yeah, exactly. See, this is what happens. 8 months without releasing a book, and you just sit around thinking of new jokes.
Well, if somebody could follow you around with it, yeah. And then every time you was ranting, and the rant had to stop, they could just press it,
Something to think about for all of you entrepreneurs and investors and inventors out there. So, without any further ado, first topic, Paul, Ronnie Deila. I was mispronouncing it the whole time. I even referred to him as Finnish on the last show, which is obviously incorrect. He's obviously Swedish. I mean Norwegian.
I haven't even started yet. All right. Yeah.
I was pronouncing his name Ronnie Deila. It's actually Deila, but no less than 12 hours after we had explained on the show that he was the manager-elect, he was introduced officially as the Celtic manager. So no longer are we a rudderless ship. Paul, your initial thoughts on Ronnie Deila, his signing as the new manager of Celtic Football Club, and his introduction there on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it was the usual Celtic welcome, wasn't it? I mean, the fans were there outside the ground. Press conference was in the number 7 restaurant, because obviously now the sort of stadium's on lockdown now because of the Commonwealth Games. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we really found out much more than we already knew. Really about him. Pretty impressive when he was talking. It was good to hear him mention him. Did he speak English and so on? His English seems pretty good. What was noticeable there was clearly a kind of set play there where Peter Lawwell was there to kind of guide him through it, but I noticed he jumped in a few times and gave his own answers and stuff like that.
Good to see.
And so I was quite impressed with that, and he clearly has an understanding of the club. He's clearly done his homework in the time that he's been there, and quite frankly, any manager that pledges to strip when we're in the Champions League will do me like.
No question about it. I love the spirit and the attitude that came from that. My initial impressions, obviously before watching the press conference in its entirety and I'm listening to him speak, I think that has a lot to do with it. Many of the pictures and much of the video that went around, it seemed as though his eyes were like saucers. I'm not so sure that he knew what to expect, or he expected the response and the turnout to be quite so massive. I think over time. The Celtic support will reveal themselves, no pun intended for his stripping tendencies. But I think that it's the type of thing where enough people who have enough of a reputable reputation, I guess, if you want to say, are coming out and defending him, and they're firmly in his corner. I mean, he has so many highly regarded supporters that. You really have to go along with it. I think it's a safe bet from Peter Lawwell's standpoint. And as we mentioned, this guy has a track record of taking sort of unpolished resources and turning them into sparkling, shiny diamonds. And that's exactly sort of what our business model is at this point. And I do think that, when you see, especially given the sights from yesterday where he returned to his former club and the amount of outpouring of emotion that was there for him. I mean, he was like almost worshipped to hero status. I think that's reassuring for me as a Celtic supporter.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been quite a couple of journalists, Scottish journalists, that have been in Oslo for the last 4 or 5 days.
Kenny Miller.
And the feedback has been that, nobody's got a bad word to say about him, and believe me, they would print it if they did,
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
I mean, it was a phenomenal going away they gave him. The banners and all that kind of thing. It was just, the man's clearly highly regarded by his people, and rightly so when you given the achievements and given what he's done for that club. And what I thought about him was more than anything in that last press conference is he's definitely got the common touch. He's a very personable kind of guy. And, he was happy to make jokes about the fact that we could play his former team in the Champions League and all that kind of thing. And sort of, I think that's kind of important because, as you know, Celtic's an all-encompassing club and it's a massive job. And if you've not got a sense of humour within it, then you probably drive yourself insane after about 6 months. Now, clearly he's got a massive task on his hands and he set the stall out straight away. And people were saying, the last time I saw a manager like this was Tony Mowbray promising to play attacking football. And I was at Tony Mowbray's press conference when he became Celtic manager, and that was nothing like that press conference there. Tony Mowbray almost looked like he was embarrassed to be there the last time. And, he was like, I'm just... whereas Ronnie was just like straight and about it and all that kind of thing.
No nonsense.
And, you see him, it was all kind of dramatic, the way he came up in the car and then out in the Celtic way and all that kind of thing. We thank the council for that once again. But, it was first impressions. Never really found out much from the man and kind of knew that he was going to go back to Norway and have the kind of final goodbye and all that kind of thing. And I'm sure that was already prearranged and so on and so forth. But be interested to see when he comes back and gets down to it.
The thing that was reassuring to me in all of this was the fact that the decision and the appointment drew a lot of criticism from, the usual British media types. I'm talking about Talk Sport. I'm talking about even the Daily Record. Even former players that came out and said this was an underwhelming appointment, and Celtic have fallen by the wayside, that they can't even draw these big, quote unquote, big names to come in and manage Celtic. It's not as much of an appeal anymore. And the fact that they laid that criticism down on him and on the club for making this is reassuring to me, because quite frankly I don't put a lot of stock in what they have to say, basically with anything. And I think that this is the type of thing where obviously it's high risk, high reward, but it's the type of thing that Celtic have over the past several years have really been extremely successful with. And I think that it just goes hand in hand with the direction that the club is taking. And I feel good about it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
On you go.
Okay, next topic. Neil Lennon came out, and obviously a couple of weeks after he left the post, he had some downtime, had some time away to recharge the batteries, as it were. Much was made about the fact that he really didn't have that opportunity as Celtic manager, given the end of the seasons typically run right into the new season. But what he said specifically, talking about Ronny Deila, was that they had talked about Ronny Deila as a potential assistant manager for Celtic, and now kind of maybe sets up an awkward pretense, given the fact that Ronnie is now the manager proper. Were these comments helpful, hurtful, not really all that influential?
I just thought they were pretty stupid, to be honest. He's entitled to his opinion and whatever, but I think he was being a wee bit ecumenical with the truth, to be quite honest, because first of all, as Ronnie's assistant manager said, and Ronnie hinted at the press conference, he was never interested in being a number two to anybody. And why should he be?
Exactly.
He's a successful man, is he? And right. Second of all, it was clearly made apparent with Celtic that the point was going to be so that he could step into Neil Lennon's role if he was going to take that job, rather than be just a number two. Because let's face it, it's night and day between a manager and a number two. It's as simple as that. And for the comments to come out that day and all that kind of thing, it was just a wee bit like, the great Tommy Burns, when he left Celtic in '97, after he was sacked, he tried to get him to go out the side door. He says, "No, I'm going out the front door." the man never set foot back in the club for at least a year because he gave them that distance and he gave them that respect, never said a word about anything. And that's the way it should be as far as I'm concerned with Celtic managers. We all love what Lenny's done and all that kind of thing, but it just, clearly there's a kind of phony war going on between him and Lawwell and all that. And to be honest, I couldn't care less. As far as I'm concerned, it's like, thanks for playing, Neil, all the rest of it, but, we've moved on to something else now, and I'm not really interested in what Peter Lawwell's got to say about things. I'm into football, and I want to hear what football people have got to say. So I think there was probably just a wee bit of spitefulness and a kind of try to demean, and then, of course, trying to talk up Roy Keane and all that kind of thing, and it's weird because... when Roy Keane was being touted as manager, a sales supporter that I know and respect a lot was like, this is going to be a disaster. And I was kind of like, well, what do you think? And he said, I'm telling you now, all we need is a safe pair of hands. He said, because we're on the way to 10 in a row. We don't need anybody coming in and rocking the boat. We've got a good set of players there. We've got everything going for us. We've got young guys coming through. Why do we need somebody to come in and start upsetting everything? And I was like, okay, fair enough. And there was definitely, pluses if Keane had took the job there and wrong. But I would just think that anybody, and the same goes for you alluded to the ex-players and that Sutton and Hartson, just shut the fuck up. Really, it's like, you're only able to comment on it because you played for Celtic and that. It was a long time ago, and you know what, absolutely nothing about the guy. So didn't start commenting saying, oh, this is a bad appointment and all that kind of thing. Because like the rest of us, you didn't know anything about the guy whatsoever. And only time will tell. And we might have got it wrong, but we might have just made the boldest move. And I'd ask a lot of them, would have seen the same thing about Brendan Rodgers when he went to Liverpool.
Yeah, no question about it. I think it's even further than that. I mean, you're right. None of these people know anything about Ronny Deila. And it leads me to think that they don't really know much about the club as it currently stands. Like you said, it's been a long time since they've been involved with the club. Maybe they're speaking... from a perspective of a player that played under Martin O'Neill, and those were different times. Let's be honest, that was 10 years ago, and it was a completely different set of circumstances that was going on at the club then versus now. With regard to Neil Lennon, I'm not so sure that he made them with the intent to sort of rock the boat. I mean, maybe he did. I don't know. I think it could have been a harmless sort of throwaway comment, but it was ill-advised. I would agree that. I mean, like you said, when you leave such a storied post as Celtic manager. I mean, he himself, Neil Lennon himself, has said, time and again that it's a position of privilege. It's such a big chair, and when you leave that, you owe it to the club and you owe it to your successor to give them your silence, or at least just be supportive. And in the best interest of the club. And I certainly think that his comments are not. They're not well advised in the best interest of the club. I don't think that Ronny Deila is the type that's even going to pay attention to this sort of thing. I mean, you hit on a couple of points that I completely agree with. Ronny Deila is not, as opposed to, say, a Roy Keane or maybe even some of the other names that were mentioned, Ronny Deila is going to come in and he's just going to set about to do the job. He's not going to there's never going to be a situation where the story is going to be about him, and you could definitely see a situation like that developing if Roy Keane stepped into that job. I think, Ronny Deila is committed, just to do the job itself.
I think as well with these things, it's because they didn't know him and therefore can't get any insight, can't get any exclusives and all that kind of thing, and they might think they know Roy better or whatever. Listen, that doesn't make you a good football manager. Alan McCoy is one of the most connected, popular guys in the game. He's absolutely fucking hopeless as a manager, so it doesn't mean anything. Celtic, to me, the one thing I really like about this appointment, right, without knowing really anything about the guy or what we've got today, is the fact that they've actually laid out a long-term strategy. And that's something that we've not done for a while.
Yep.
Because the strategy the last time when we appointed a manager was to kind of clean up the mess Mowbray left and try and win that league back. Well, we've moved on for that now. It's a whole different ball game, right? We're trying to set and install a place where we can go and compete in Europe and keep winning this league. And this is a guy that picked today who's going to try and enhance players, motivate players, and all that kind of thing. So you can see that the guy has the attributes that fits in with the Celtic model. Whether the guy is successful at that, nobody knows. But to write him off after 2 days or 3 days for a few extra quid for the Daily Record or Sun, then sorry, I didn't value their opinion at all.
Very well said. Next topic. The press conference, we talked a little bit about it already. Was it a little cozy? I mean, just the dynamic there? Yeah,
you know what? A wee bit, aye. I actually spoke to a couple of journalists about this because, it didn't feel like there was many pertinent questions asked. To which I think I thought one of the obvious questions would have been, right, so you're definitely picking the players, you're definitely signing players, etc. That was never asked. And I was then told by a journalist that, oh, well, if somebody had asked that, then you would have all accused us of being divisive on day one and all that kind of thing. So you can't really win. But I mean, certainly Celtic are excellent at stage managing these things. Definitely. And the one thing you didn't want to do in the Scottish game is piss off a manager of Celtic or Sevco for that matter too much too soon, because you just can't, because this is what's going to feed your industry. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you can't just be like in about them right away.
You need access.
Yeah, of course. And Celtic, I think most people will tell you Celtic are probably the worst club in Scotland for access, no doubt about it. So you're not going to shut down any kind of avenue. I mean, to be honest, some of the journalists out there I wouldn't even, how they can even call themselves, Grant Russell and Rahman sitting there with stupid jokes and stupid ties on and all that kind of thing. And I see these people sitting there and I just think, you know what, you'd be as well just taking it down to the wee mans or something like that. We slagged on Bears Bar, because you get more sense out of the fans there to ask them some more pertinent questions. Whereas will you strip off? No, he must have been thinking of that one all day, Rahman. Will you strip off in Scotland? Nobody cares. And to me, it just kind of patronises the fans. To me, Scottish football fans, and I'm not just saying Celtic supporters, I'm talking about fans right across the board, are some of the most passionate, educated fans on the planet, right? We absolutely love our football, and we want to ask the questions. And then we see these idiots talking about stripping and all this kind of thing, and with the language barrier, we're going to have to sell players right away. What are you talking about? Ask the man about his football. Ask the man about his vision. Yeah. Ask the man about how he managed to get a fucking team from anywhere to the top of Norwegian football,
Exactly. And I mean, you're right. So many questions weren't pertinent. And the thing that struck me, when there was a pertinent question asked, talking about the resources and the funding that would be available, Peter Lowell steps right in. And Peter Lowell in that entire press conference, it was almost like he was a nervous defense attorney sitting next to, his client that, as a case that's open and shut against him. He was just sort of lurking the whole time. He steps up and he just always comes off like such a bully. And to a certain extent, I appreciate that, because the press in Scotland are no favors to the club and what the club stands for. You mentioned the fact that there isn't a great deal of access at Celtic, and some of that is quite understandable. But I think that Peter Lowell didn't do his image any great favors, in the way that he presented himself. And when that question did come up, he comes out and he says, "Well, we don't talk about that. I'm surprised at you," and sort of shamed the journalist. And it sort of speaks to how are we ever going to have any sort of accountability or any sort of appropriate questions when the CEO of the club itself shuts down anybody who would dare to sort of enforce that. But I
agree, and also I'm against it as well, because we slagged off the Huns for years for not being like that with Murray and stuff like that. So we shouldn't just be all sycophantically listening to everything he says, because frankly the man tells a lot of lies. We could sit here and prove that in 5 seconds.
Right.
But similarly, he is the most powerful man in Scottish football, and he can do basically whatever he wants. And I remember reading, I think it was Lego's blog a year and a half ago, said that he basically runs the sports departments of the Sun and the Daily Record. I laughingly said that to a journalist at the Record, and he said, he does. So you can kind of understand that he is the king of the castle and all that, but I'm not saying slag off the man and all the rest of it for whatever reason, but he should be accountable and he should be questioned. And unfortunately, he's probably got about 90% of the journalists in there compromised to fuck, and they're not willing to open their mouth,
The thing that I liked about Dyla, though, was that when Lawwell would jump in there and sort of try and exert himself, Dyla was just a cool character. He just sat there and he did. You're right, he didn't shy away from any questions, and I think that you can sense a steel cut, firm determination in his ideals and what he wants to achieve and how he wants to achieve them, and I think that's going to hold the club in good stead through his time.
Yeah. Beaten by the buzzer again.
Next topic: Tony Watt, a name that just will absolutely not go away. Now it's a situation where
I've tried to get away with it.
Well, yeah, but it's GF3. Just when he thought he was out, they pull him back in. Now, an interesting sort of topic, and obviously much has been made of the relationship between Tony Watt and the club, and specifically with Neil Lennon and how it's been fractured. He sends him away on loan. That obviously went pear-shaped. Tony Watt comes back. Nobody can deny the amount of talent that he has, but an interesting ironic twist is it's been reported, and I believe, to a certain extent it's been confirmed, that Ronnie had Tony Watt on its radar a couple of months ago to bring him to Norway. Well, now all of a sudden that's not going to need to happen. So what does this mean for Tony Watt's future?
Well, I mean, that is an interesting one. And, maybe that Tony Watt might be exactly the type of player that Ronnie can come in and actually, develop into the kind of player that we all know he can actually probably be, because, he's clearly... look, there's two things that Tony Watt's got that makes him have a chance. He's got talent and pace. It's clear that his attitude's maybe not been the best, and so on and so forth. I didn't think the manager publicly ridiculed him at least 3 times, which never helped, and I never understood why that in any shape or form would help a young player coming through.
It seemed very personal.
I mean, honest to God, it's like, here's this guy, and he's like, I saw him 2 years ago at Firhill ploughing his trade in a youth tournament, and like 3 months later he scored the winning goal against Barcelona. It's just like, you can't even begin to imagine what that must be like for a guy.
Incredible.
So, I would like to see Tony Watt have a future, because I'd like to see any of the young Celtic men at the club have a future and progress, because I think that's what we all want deep down. He might just well have that chance, because I think, from what I can gather about Ronnie's kind of style of football, is it's all about possession and it's all about pace. And that to me suits Tony Watt to a T. Yes is the answer I'm trying to give you, is yes, I think he has got another chance, and hopefully Tony will have the right mentality after being away a year and saying, right, you know what, he didn't get many second chances and here's mine.
A couple of things that are really exciting for Tony Watt's future. Number one, Tony came out in the press and mentioned the fact that, when he came first on the scene, he gets a place in the starting 11 and he's featuring for Celtic in some of these games. And then he scores one of the biggest goals of the last decade, maybe, for Celtic. He's living on his own. It's a lot for an 18, 19-year-old to try and digest. Let's make no mistake about that. I can't even imagine. But, what he said was, going away, in spite of the fact that he faced some less than desirable situations with the manager in Belgium, it was a learning and a growing experience for him. It forced him to grow as mentally and also as a player. And I think that his reflection on that time and his admission that he probably could have done some things better, not just while he was in Belgium, but also at Celtic before he left, I think is a part of the maturation process. That's something that you want to see from a 20-year-old and somebody that's committed to growing and to developing and improving. So I think that he also mentioned that he's moving back in with his parents. He's not going to live alone. He's committed to nutrition, eating right, training right. His dad is motivating him to get to the gym every day and to get his head right where it needs to be. Combine that with the fact that you talk to the assistant manager at Ronnie Dylas' old club, and he talks about the fact that one of Ronnie's biggest strong suits is getting the players to buy into his system, his man management, and the biggest thing that you can do for a player is to help them to improve, to get them to see the improvement in their own tutelage, and therefore, that just sort of strengthens the buy-in. You combine that with the fact that Ronnie clearly already rates him, and I think that that is nothing but great things for Tony Watt and his future, and specifically his future at Celtic.
Yeah, look, they're clearly, the manager is going to come in and there's going to be 1 or 2 after he's just still going to fancy and want to get rid of it as soon as possible. They want to fit in for the philosophy, and you know what? I think a couple of them might be big hitters, because, and I didn't foolhardy mention any names, but I think we've got certain players in the team that, while we might think they're great players and all the rest of it, they just didn't sound like they're going to fit in with the kind of philosophy that he wants to do. Whether he's going to have the balls to turn round and actually take out a big hitter early doors, sometimes you need to do that to assert your authority. We'll just wait and see. But at the end of the day, the guy, he's probably, it's all a wee bit surreal at the minute, It's like, all the waiting, and then boom, we get a manager and suddenly he's gone again, and now he's back in Norway, and then, and he's probably just thinking, what day is it? What time is it? So, he's probably not even thinking about people like Tony Watt, but certainly now Tony Watt has a great chance. Obviously, Big Samaras has left. there's a void filled right away. And Tony Watt, he certainly has the ability to fill it, and he's got the pace. It's about whether he has the desire to actually go for it now.
Next topic, Fergus McCann writing a letter to supporters telling them to buy up season books. Is this a heartfelt plea from a loyal friend of the club, or is this a sort of pontification from afar that's not really all that productive?
Yeah, I was a wee bit surprised at this, to be honest. No surprise that Celtic fucked up PR as game, but just sort of where this came from. And I know Fergus is going to unfurl the flag and all that kind of thing, but you know, on one hand, you've got this interview where he's talking about the fact that in Boston he didn't know who the players were, and then now he's telling you the importance of the fact that you have to buy season tickets to buy players. So I was kind of thinking, what was he saying? Like, to Celtic, get rid of these nobodies, you know, so I actually know who they are. I mean, I don't know what it was all about. You know, I think there are, you know, it's clearly a drive to sell season tickets, right? And so what you have at the club is a structure where each department is effectively independent of each other, and each one of them is relied upon to make money, right? And there's two aspects of that. The first thing is clearly they need to sell as many season tickets as they possibly can, because that's what kind of fuels the jet engine. And secondly, the other thing, which you know I know has been a sort of bone of contention on a slight tangent for the fans, is the selling of the pitch. Mm-hmm. Now, I just happened to, and I don't know if anybody else, you can check this out, or I'm sure they're deleted now. I actually saw an advertisement that was tweeted out by Celtic Football Club, official Twitter, yesterday, I think it was, or this morning, that basically said, you know, buy the strip and buy this pitch. And I hadn't, you know, I'd heard about it, but I didn't know any of the details. And I clicked on it, it was actually a link for their Facebook page. And the advertisement came up with buy the pitch, however much it costs. And I swear to God, if there was 150 comments were like, this is an absolute disgrace. You know, and it was just people slaughtering them for, like, you know, this money-making garbage and so on and so forth. And, you know, sometimes I think when these kind of things happen, I just think, you know what, there's still that wee bit disconnect there between the people who run the club and the people who actually fund the club, i.e. us, in the sense that, you know, and I know people at Celtic will say, well, you know, Man United are out with their pitch and so on. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but you've got a banner sitting up there in the Lisbon line stand that says a club like no other. You know what I mean? So that doesn't really fly me. And the Fergus thing, I don't know whose idea. It really does strike a wee bit in me like the Tory government getting Obama to say, go and tell them what to vote no. You know, it was kind of like Fergus, go and tell them what to buy season tickets. And, you know, his word's as good as any, you know, clearly what he done for the club and all that kind of thing. But, yeah, I was a bit surprised about it. I don't know what you thought, Graham.
I mean, I can go either way. I mean, my first reaction was, here's a multi-millionaire coming out and telling people in Scotland that, which, you know, he lives in the leafy suburbs of Boston, and you know, obviously the economy here is starting to come back, but it's a completely different world, you know, when you go over to the UK and specifically Scotland. And I do hope that everybody votes yes, in spite of, you know, what the hell my president did. It's absolutely ridiculous. But, you know, on one hand, my first thought was, who the hell is he to tell anybody, you know, that might be struggling to make, you know, the payments on their rent or their home or their food or whatever, that, you know, they're fair weather supporters, because now that, you know, Rangers are dead, that you know, they don't turn out to the game. I think it's much more complicated than that. And Ferguson, his comments did clarify, you know, it's a completely different, you know, element, you know, when you're talking about myself, you know, Fergus talking about himself, and, you know, people that might be struggling. So there was a bit of sort of self-affirmation in the comment, but if there is that sort of element, if you do have that sort of hesitation, why would you make that comment? You know, another aspect of it, though, is, I mean, there are, you know, we can say all we want about, you know, the supporters that are struggling, you know, to make ends meet, and you need to make choices, and that's an understandable sort of thing, but, you know, to a certain extent, there are still supporters who, you know, I mean, I think back to a post that I saw on a message board, and yes, you know, from time to time, I do make the stupid decision to go on message boards. You know, I saw a post on a message board last season saying, all right, we're playing some Diddy team this weekend, Partick Thistle or something, you know, tell me why I should go to the game. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, you're coming on a message board and you want me to sell you on why you should go to Celtic Park when you have a season book? You know, obviously you have the resources, but, you know, you can't be bothered to turn up when people all over the world would kill just to go to even one game. I mean, I think there is a certain element of fans that do fall into that parameter, but it's I think poorly advised for Fergus to come out and make a general statement like that when, you know, that's not, you know, the sort of overreaching element of the support. And I think that it lends credence to this stupid idea that, you know, we need Rangers for some reason, which is nonsense.
Well, I think, there's, to me, the real issue is why. It's not about what you've got to come back to this. It's why you're not coming back, and that's the two things that they'll not address. One of them is the treatment of supporters, which has pissed off so many people. The steward and all that kind of thing. And I know they're trying to address that now. Root and branch inquiry stewards. And the second reason, which they just refuse to address, is the cheating that went on for decades, and the club have said absolutely nothing about. And if they honestly think that that's not an issue, I mean, it's an issue for practically about, I'd say 70% of fans that I talk to who didn't go to games anymore, they'll say, well, why should I? You know what I mean? It was a rigged league, and what have they done about it? Nothing. And that these are the things, and it's, what it is, it's Fergus McCann is probably the only person on the planet that would even have this discussion about that would actually be a case as well. You can sort of see the merit in some of the things he says because of what he did and stuff. Because if anybody else was saying he's a raw fucking disgrace for only turning up to certain games and that kind of thing, they'd be absolutely slaughtered by people who would say, because I've got kids and I've got not got a job and I've not, whatever many reasons it is. So it's a very, very hard route to go down. But I have to say, I think it's a wee bit symptomatic of Celtic, because I genuinely believe there are people at that club who just think if these people turned up, everything would be fine. And that's not really the road to go down to sell season tickets.
Absolutely, and it is just a declaration to your point of, how big a figure Fergus McCann still is. The fact that he can make these statements and there isn't, a groundswell to just be an outrage. Next topic, turning to the World Cup. Why are so many players getting injured in friendlies? We saw Royce, picking up a knock up today. Neymar, I think, got bit by a mosquito, and he was down for a little while. It caused, huge panic throughout. It seems as though these stupid international friendlies, it seems as though there's more friendlies this time. I don't know if this is the case, but it seems like there's more friendlies in the lead up to this World Cup than in other World Cups previously. But, there's just a rash of injuries, and it's unfortunate to see.
Well, it's a weird one because, in the past people say, they play too many games now. It's like, well, they played a hell of a lot of games back in the day in the 60s and that, and, they still got on with it. And that was when the squads were much, much lower and all that kind of thing. I do think part of it is the fact that perhaps some of the countries are less well off than others, and therefore haven't got the kind of proper preparation and all that sort of thing, and medical facilities. I do think now what's endemic in the game is players playing in games when they're clearly no fit. And we've seen it happen in the Champions League. We had the farce with, what's his name, playing for Atletico Madrid. Of Costa. It was just like, what an absolute joke that was. You know what I mean? Completely. And even to an extent with Ronaldo. Was going to drop him. He just kind of coasted through the game and then made it look like he won the thing single-handedly when he scored the penalty. That's kind of par for the course. But I think that is a big part of it is that players are playing in games when they're not 100% fit. I don't know if it's because managers are pushing them harder. Certainly I would say the big players are, and it's interesting. I think World Cups are being really hindered by the players who play at the top level every week and then play in the Champions League and have long, hard seasons, and then they go into this and a lot of them are just looking knackered. And I don't know the reason for that, because you would think that, but the preparation should be better, the diet should be better, the recovery period should be better. So, I don't think you can pinpoint one single thing.
Yeah, you bring up a great point about the amount of football that many of these top players are playing. It's almost miraculous. It's almost superhuman, the amount of football. To use an example, Xavi, Iniesta, the amount of football that they were playing in the lead up to the 2010 World Cup, where they're playing in 60 plus games in a season, and these aren't big guys. These are just tiny wee guys that are running more than anybody has ever ran before. I saw some statistics at the 74 World Cup where, when it was tracked, the players ran about 5,000 meters. And then, all of a sudden, they took metrics at the 2010 World Cup and it was about 10,000 meters. So it doubled over the course of about 30 years. And now, you're even seeing at some of the metrics from the Barcelona games. It's a different style of play, obviously. But some of these Barcelona players are running 15,000 meters over the course of a game. So there's so much stress being put on the body. And I mean, the human body is what it is. It can only take so much punishment. And I think that, there's a combination of players playing a certain system with their club, and then all of a sudden, oftentimes they go and they play for their country, and it's a completely different system. They're having to do different things, maybe some things that their bodies really aren't conditioned to do. Combine that with the fact that, many of these managers, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Being an international manager is a one-cycle event anymore. You only get one chance, one World Cup to sort of state your claim or to make an impact. And with that, the best intentions or the best wishes for that particular player and the long-term aspect of that player, don't really come into it. You need to harness the best that player has over the course of, hopefully a month and a half if you get into the knockout stages and you progress. So I think that the combination of overzealous managers that are really pushing, their international, the players that they're managing. I think it's just putting more stress on the body than perhaps we've ever seen before.
Well, just to flip that around, actually, something I thought of there was the fact that Pele and Maradona would often play 100 games a year. Because when Maradona was at Barcelona or Boca, Santos, Pele, they could play exhibition matches anywhere in the world, command huge fees because of the players playing in them.
Yep.
And, they still kept going. I think the only time Maradona was ever injured was when Goya Kachia, the Bucha de Bilbao, broke his leg. Yep. And so it's weird, but you can see it. I mean, I know Barcelona, especially Spain, that kind of group, the cruxy players in there, they're just playing unbelievable. And then you see them pitching up. I saw Barcelona pitching up in America about a month and a half after Spain won the World Cup. And that, it's just like, here we go. It's just, it's absolutely incredible. And it's a shame because it's a kind of thing. It's a kind of theory about the World Cup final for me as well. As I think one of the reasons why World Cup finals are just not as good as they used to be is that by the time players get to the World Cup final, they're literally dead on their feet.
Yeah.
And they just can't erase it anymore. You know what I mean? I mean, the last World Cup final was pretty terrible. And they get the extra time, and it's because it becomes they don't make a mistake and that kind of, and eventually tiredness just overtakes them, and it's bad because this is meant to be the marquee tournament in world football, and you want to see all the best players and all that kind of thing. But it's definitely affecting them greatly, I'd say.
It's a shame though when you do see that the top players aren't going to be available. I mean that's what you want to see in the World Cup. But next topic: is there a player that folk might not be aware of that you think can be the next star? I mean, we see it with some of these World Cup cycles and specifically with the European tournament. I mean, think back to 2008 or Andre Shavin, and the performance that he put in there, and next thing you know, he's a household name for a little while until he went to Arsenal and didn't win any trophies. Paul, who's going to be the next star that's going to come out of this World Cup that people might not be aware of?
Oh, thank you. First of all, bless you for making that a long question so I could think. You know what? I'll pluck one right out and say James Rodriguez of Colombia.
Yes.
Who last year went to Monaco for, I think it was 50 million euros. And Colombians reckon this guy's the heir apparent to Valderrama. He's an absolute top player on the ball, the old school playmaker, the kind of Georgie Hadji, Enzo Schifo type guy that just ran games, that just took the whole thing. And he is someone that I know that Colombia I think are actually going to be a dark horse for this tournament, could do well.
Agreed.
And it'll be because of this guy, because he's been one of the guys he's propelled Monaco as well, because clearly Monaco are spending like it's going out of fashion as well. But James Rodriguez, I think he's only about 22, 23 year old, something like that.
Yep.
But the amount of ability that guy is, and he's got a wee bit of swagger about him. I'd go as far to say is that if he maintains it, he reminds me of young Zinedine Zidane. That's how highly I rate him. It's still potential there now, and I might fall flat on his face. But I would say to anybody, look out for James Rodriguez of Colombia in this tournament, because that guy has got an abundance of ability.
Agreed. And you point out the fact he moved to Monaco for big money alongside of his countryman Falcao. And getting back to the previous topic, I mean, what a shame that we're not going to see Falcao in a World Cup, because I think on his day when he's on form, he's the finest striker on the face of the planet. I mean, he can head the ball, he can use both feet. I mean, he's just absolutely clinical. He's just a destroyer in the box. I mean, it's got to be an absolute nightmare for an opposing center half. But James Rodriguez, I think, especially going up against a side that's going to play a deeper line, if he can find space in the middle of the park, get some time on the ball, he can do absolutely magical things and set up scoring opportunities.
Yeah. And he's got a great grounder as well with being at Porto. He learned his trade at Porto and then made the move at the right time. So, yeah, definitely want to watch out for.
Yeah. Getting along and sort of taking in with this theme, it's well convenient. Talking about players that are out injured and won't be available. Frank Ribéry is obviously, he's not going to be playing for France now. I mean, in spite of what you might think of him personally, I mean, some people love him, some people don't really take to him. He's a dynamic player in his day. His replacement is very highly rated from what I've seen of him, Antoine Griezmann. From what I've seen of him, he can be an exceptionally dynamic player. I don't think that he's quite gotten the type of visibility just yet where he can put his skills up on that higher level for all to see. But I think this is going to be a great opportunity, especially playing in that French side that is, they're going to use power and they're going to use pace. And it's surprising to me that they still continually get overlooked when you ask people, who are their favorites for this side. I mean, obviously it's a steep mountain to climb for these European teams. If history tells us anything, going to South America and having a good showing, but you can't look past France at all.
Yeah, no. I see, that was, by the way, see on that thing about the South America thing, I genuinely don't think it's going to apply anywhere because the last World Cup that was in South America was 78, I think, in Argentina, and football's moved on since then. You know what I mean? There's loads of things where they're acclimatising and that kind of thing, and I don't think it's going to be an issue. When you touched on Fran, the other one is Paul Pogba.
Yes.
He looks like a superstar in the making as well.
No question about it. I mean, he's just injecting him right into that Juventus side. I mean, it's a thing of beauty at times. When his head's in it and when he's pushing on all cylinders. That's definitely one to watch as well. Another one, getting a bit closer to home for me that I've been really touting for Celtic to go and get. I refer to him as a right-footed Chris Commons, is Graham Zusi, who plays for the United States side. He can play on the right. He can play on the left-hand side. Very good with the ball at his feet. He's not blessed with an incredible amount of pace at full speed, but he has that quick first step that can, when he's taken on a man, he can get by them. A bit of the James Forrest about him, maybe not quite as adept at the finished product, with shooting, but he can certainly link up the build up, and I think he would fit right in with a Celtic side. He doesn't get pushed over quite so easily, and I think that he can definitely play a mark in this World Cup. He's going to be a key player for this United States team, who at times has a bit of difficulty putting the ball in the back of the net, but when he's on form, and Josie Altidore, in spite of his Sunderland form, it looks like he's rounding into a bit of confidence and a bit of form himself. I think that's a partnership that can really gain some attention.
Absolutely.
All right. Switching from the next top star, let's talk about players who may be rounding into their swan song. You see this in each World Cup. Players that know this is going to be their last World Cup. It seems as though they play with a bit more energy and a bit more inspiration. I mean, talking about Zidane, a bit earlier, in that 2006 World Cup. I mean, he was absolutely superb, throughout the entire tournament and in the final until he, drop kicked headbutted Materazzi, and then the one that I think of from 2010 is Van Bronckhorst, who scored an exceptional goal. He was immense for that Holland side that made the march to the final. Who are you pipping this time? Players that, I mean, this is going to be it for them. They're going to be playing with that bit of spark and a bit of added enthusiasm.
I'm going to. There's two players I think might be, because I think is the last one. The first one is Pirlo, who I think, is just, I mean, I've not read his book, but, the big quote is the fact that, he said all this bollocks is talked about psychology and tactics. He said, I played PlayStation all day, then won a World Cup at night. He just doesn't seem to give a fuck, basically. And for a guy, he just seems to be such a perfect physical specimen for a guy who's clearly, in the last few years of his career. And maybe a more controversial one, I just think this is going to be a tournament where you'll see the very best of Wayne Rooney, because I think this will be the last World Cup he's going to play in. And he's not performed at a World Cup. He has not performed in a World Cup, and he's primarily because he's not been fit. There was the story in 2006 when they had the metatarsal, and I think the whole of England went into fucking mourning for a month till they come back. He walks into the hotel in Portugal and shouts, "The big man's back." And it's kind of like, I understand the ego, because I think all top players need the ego, but he never done anything. And now he's got an opportunity to do it. He's clearly been taking it a bit more seriously. He's got trainers in now and all that kind of thing, and he had trying to get himself in the best possible condition. And so you know what, I think you might see something for him. And just a wee tiny outsider, if he gets a chance, Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard, I think, is one of the most elegant, talented midfield players that's played in England in the last 30 years.
Agreed.
20 odd goals a season. Plays the game well, plays the game in the right spirit, intelligent player, and I think he's that kind of Van Bronckhorst type as well, who just think, you know what, this is my last chance to shine. I think he would take it.
Yeah, no question about it.
That's serendipitous, that is. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, Wayne is definitely up for this. He's one of the ones. I mean, it's plausible that he's 28-year-old, and I mean it's funny to think of Wayne Rooney being 28. I mean, it seems as though he's been playing forever, but it's plausible that he could play maybe in Russia, but certainly you have to question whether or not his body is going to hold up. I mean, he's played so much over the course, and you can see his body breaking down, over certain stretches. But this does line up quite nicely for him. I mean, his form is certainly up there, and it seems as though he's fit. His mentality is such that he understands that he needs to round out his CV, as it were, and have a good performance in one of these international tournaments. And you're right. I mean, he hasn't done that, so that's definitely one to watch. I'm going to turn my attention to Africa. I think that Michael Essien, and I'm obviously focusing quite a bit on Group G, being the United States, but in this Ghana side that is extremely light in defense. I mean, it's even been talked about Michael Essien perhaps dropping back. I don't necessarily see that happening, but he's going to have a huge impact. With Ghana only bringing 6 defenders, including fullbacks, he's going to have a lot of work to do to protect that back line. And it's a player that obviously he didn't have the greatest of seasons with Milan. I don't really think anybody especially did, but I think there were a lot of mentality issues, and a lot of it had to do with the system and sort of where Milan is at this moment. But at the end of the day, Essien is still a very fine footballer, and I think that taking him out of that sort of Milan malaise, if you will, and putting him into this international tournament, especially considering he's 31-year-old at the moment, this is going to be his last go around, and he's going to want to be that leader for that side. So I'm going to have my eye on him. Samuel Eto'o, another one who this is going to be his last go around, and I mean he is really that Cameroon side. When you get away from him, everything has to go through him. He's had a decent season with Chelsea. I mean, he scored some absolutely immense, fantastic goals. And it's all a question of what Eto'o shows up. I mean, if it's going to be the Eto'o that really can't be bothered that we've seen from time to time, then it's all going to sort of fall by the wayside. But I would expect and I would imagine he's not going to just sort of leave everything to chance and just say the hell with it. I mean, this is really his legacy here. Another player, Clint Dempsey, coming back to America. Obviously, there's a theme developing here, but this is going to be his last World Cup. I think there's some questions about how ambitious he possibly is coming back to the MLS. Maybe people saying maybe he's lost a step and he just doesn't have it anymore. But he's captaining this U.S. team. I think that he's going to be up for it, and I think that a lot of the fortunes of America are going to come down to him. So definitely a player to watch there as well.
Magic. Can't add any more.
Next topic: which team is likely to self-destruct first, France or Holland?
Well, I mean, if you're a betting man, you'd need to go with Holland, just because they've always got a problem with everything. At some point, I mean, it's interesting because if you'd asked the question 4 years ago, then you probably would have said same teams roughly, whatever. And of course, it was England.
Yeah.
It reminded me somebody a couple of days ago about John Terry just came out and absolutely slaughtered everybody after the first game.
Yeah.
And said that the mood in the camp wasn't great and all that kind of thing, which is just like, I mean, come on, fuck, you know what I mean? It's just like, we're here in the World Cup. Now, that doesn't seem to be the case with England this time. They seem to be much more a happy camp and all that kind of thing. But certainly Holland, the fact that Van Gaal's already taken the Man United job, I believe on the say so of Van Persie by the looks of it. So maybe he'll, and Holland have got a chance because Van Persie never tried a fucking leg last season, so he'll be rested and fine.
Well, and it seems as though he's actually fit for once.
Aye, but France, I mean, another country that has, I mean, one of my good friends at college, a guy Benjamin, who's a Marseille person and supporter, and. Brilliant way with words, we're in a pub one time and the guy was saying something to me and he turned around to the guy and says, he's a Celtic supporter, he's been fighting all his life. And I just thought that was absolutely brilliant. And, but, kind of guy, the minute he doesn't agree with somebody, woof, he's like the blue touch paper. And that's kind of what you expect with France and that kind of thing. But I'm going to hedge my bets and say Cameroon because I don't know if you caught the story, and I have to interject this because this was one of the most horrific things I've ever read in my life, where they were refusing to go on the plane because of the bonus row. And bonuses had to be sorted out before they go on the plane, which is fine, right? And so, who comments on that? Craig Burley. This is the same Craig Burley who started the bonus row at Celtic in 1998 and was rightly questioned by a supporter and said, how's that any different to what you did? And he said, it's Club B country.
Right.
And the guy said, sorry, I didn't understand it. And he says, well, the country's your passion. He said, the club's just a job.
Yeah.
How to win friends and fucking influence people, eh?
Unbelievable. And I mean, I think it speaks volumes to the fact that, Craig Burley specifically, I'm so glad that you brought that up. I mean, Craig Burley specifically, people oftentimes have a hard time understanding why he would come out and slag Celtic so consistently as he does, and he's never been a Celtic man. I mean, even in spite of the fact that he put on the hoops and he scored some great goals and had some amazing moments. There's certain players where they come to the club, they maybe didn't support Celtic to begin with. Maybe they supported Rangers to begin with, but they come to Celtic and they embrace what Celtic is all about, the supporters, how much it means, the history of the club, etc. And he's definitely not one of those people.
No.
But it's a great point to bring up about, and especially these African countries. I mean, I've heard it commented on, the fact that there just isn't that same level of patriotism, nationalism, if you want to call it, from them. And therefore it just doesn't have that same sort of mentality that we just come to expect as natural. But specific with Holland, I mean, you're already seeing it, and fair dues to the English press. I mean, always quick to point out the shortcomings of other teams in other countries. But they've been right on top of the fact that there have been some dust ups in training, maybe some of that cohesion, and Van Gaal has lost his temper several times. Robin's diving, no surprise there. I think that the fact that France and France didn't take Samir Nasri. Samir Nasri, a very fine footballer, but he was a key component of that 2010 strife, whatever you want to call it. He didn't make the team. I think a lot of that had to play into it. The fact that he was a key player in that, as well as Ribéry. Now Ribéry isn't going to be on the plane. He's not going to be available. I think that perhaps that's going to hold that French team in good stead. They can get some of the younger players in, who are going to be looking to prove something, and maybe don't have that same level of mentality. But as it stands, I would definitely have to put.
Because I think that's the reason Argentina didn't take Tevez, because they knew Tevez wasn't going to be a starter and didn't want him hanging about moping like he did with Man City, refusing to come on and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it is pathetic. I mean, it is when you're talking about grown men here putting a World Cup and they're moaning about this, that, and next thing, and you hear them moaning about boredom and all. You're just like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? It just kind of defies belief, quite frankly. But there's clearly all these things that are going on and stuff like that. But to me, so a lot of it comes down to the fact is, listen, if you want to go down there and play for your country and try and win that World Cup, none of these things really matter. They only matter when you make them matter. And that's the bottom line. I mean, it was just like, John Terry, when he came out with Zootbus 4 years ago, the one thing we know about John Terry, self-fucking-preservation, he just came out and was like, he knew they were going to get slaughtered, so he was just distanced himself here immediately, saying it's not a day with me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. And it's just unfortunate he can't do that with fucking trophy presentations, but that's another story. But no,
or teammates' wives. I mean, let's be honest.
Well, but actually, I just remembered on that sort of subject with Craig Burley was that, Craig Burley comes to New Cumnock, and just a couple of guys in a pub one time and fucking we're talking about this and Cumnock and all this kind of thing in Ayrshire, and one of the boys says, aye, fucking Cumnock. He says, it's only fucking, you see, only two sets of people that come to Cumnock. He says, what's that? He says, fucking whores and football players. And the guy says, Christ, my mother comes from Cumnock. And he says, oh, what position does she play?
Fantastic. Last topic. This really flew by. And as has been a theme for this season's 10 in a Row podcast, we select a member of the Celtic.
The what?
The Celtic. We're not selling shit. It's the Celtic social media celebrities. So far, we've highlighted the great Paddy Brennan, who seems to be on the road to recovery. Fantastic.
I've seen photographs of him with fucking Kanzi Buckfast.
Maybe we have more work to do. Last show we highlighted the great Prolific, and I haven't been shot since, so I would take that as a good element. This week, or this show rather, we're going to highlight: will the great Shevchenko ever recover from Samaras leaving?
No. Because, first of all, I mean, I don't know if people are aware of. You're aware of this, Graham. It just happened to catch myself because it was the night. The reference point I have was it was the night that Jerry Adams was released after being detained for 4 days. Also happened to be the same night of the Celtic Player of the Year awards.
Right.
So I was sitting in front of my telly watching the Jerry Adams press conference and watching Twitter to see what the updates were. And the Celtic Player of the Year awards has gone on, and somebody who's doing the official tweet, I think Niall McCusker that does it, was basically tweeting what was happening, and so-and-so was getting this and so-and-so was getting that. And then all of a sudden, whoosh, this barrage comes for Shevchenko. What the fuck Samaras not getting that for? What's Samaras not doing? When's the fucking lifetime award for Samaras coming? He should be getting this outstanding achievement, and so on and so on and so on. That's before they'd even confirmed 100% the guy was leaving. Because if you think about it, it wasn't until the last game of the season where Sammy let it slip that, by the way, Peter Lawwell didn't even offer me a contract.
Right.
So, that's the element now. The brutal answer is no. I mean, clearly this whole Team Samaras thing, which was born after the game against Sion, when he had a particularly awful performance, sort of pinned her to Samaras, if you like. And what I will say about Samaras is I'm being one of his biggest critics, even though I think when he's on his game he's unplayable. I'm sure you, like the rest of us, watched the video that he did in Greek where he done the interview and he was talking about Little J and so on and so forth, and it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
He come across not just as a great Celtic player, but as a top human being.
Yep.
But I have to admit, at the end of the game, I just thought, why the fuck did you not do that when you were here?
Exactly.
Like, if you'd been giving interviews like that when you were here, you would be a god.
Absolutely.
There wouldn't be any debate about your ability. You could do what you like in a park if you spoke like that, So,
Peter Lawwell will be forced to resign him.
Yes, exactly that, because the guy's clearly a fantastic human being, and for to have the actual humanity to talk about the little boy and his father and the comments how we're about to tell him he leaves and all that, he's left and stuff like that. Is phenomenal, and that's what you want. And because we live in these football players, they're all fucking multi-millionaires and they couldn't give a fuck about the fans and all that kind of thing. And here was some absolute raw humanity coming from one of the top players, and it was fantastic. But I just thought, oh my god, do you not realise if you'd been done that, because I tell you, how we know with that kind of humanity and intelligence will propel you. Fucking Joey Barton gets propelled. And you've seen when he was on Question Time, when he never had Google in front of him, he never had a clue about anything.
Yeah.
So, but in that respect, Shevchenko, not being the most, shall we say, balanced individual, will probably never, ever, 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 ever forgive Peter Lawwell for not offering him the contract.
No, I agree. I mean, if anybody has been a defender of Sammy through thick and thin, it was Shevchenko. I mean, listen, I was a detractor of Sammy even when he did well. I mean, you're always suspicious about, okay, yeah, that's fine, but wait till the next game when, he's going to be absolutely atrocious again. But, nonetheless, fair play to Sammy. It did resurrect his career. It did justify Shevchenko's faith. I mean, like you said, she, started this whole Team Samaras pitch, right after the Sion game, which was probably, the bottom, the very bottom of Neil Lennon's tenure, I would say. I mean, I can't get images of Mastorovic giving away penalties out of my mind, but, that's a completely different situation. Yeah. I mean, we have to look at the case that we're dealing with here. I mean, any person, I'm talking about Shevchenko, any person that would rate Xabi Alonso over Iniesta needs their head read. I'm sorry. Xabi Alonso is a fine footballer, but, comparing him to Iniesta, no, I'm sorry. I'm not letting that go.
Well, see, you've just been slagging her. I'm going to tell you something now that will just make you feel really shitty. The last time I saw her, she actually told me that it was a week after the league last season, was that she actually cried when Samaras scored that penalty in the Dundee United game because she knew that was the last time she'd ever see him. So I hope you feel suitably like you just kicked a puppy.
Not really. No, I'm kidding. We do.
And the thing is as well is like you should actually run a competition, a free enter competition, and it's basically like, when will the time bomb go off? When will Shevchenko hear this show and explode towards you and me? In our huge capital letters, as she always does, and absolutely fucking tongue lash you for various things that you said on this podcast.
Well, hopefully it's soon. Hopefully somebody can send her a tweet now and let her know that she was a focal point of tonight's show. But I'm sure that once Samaras signs for Besiktas or whoever it is that he's going to be signed for, obviously Napoli knocked them back. But when he does sign for that other club, and it's inevitable that we're going to go up against that club in some sort of European dynamic, she is going to have to give up on the hope that Samaras is going to return.
Because I was listening to Jay Moore, the comedian who was Bob Sugar in Jerry Maguire film. He was saying that now when anybody talks shit about you now, with the way he is, he find out about it immediately.
Yeah.
And that's, Christ, we know that more than anything. You say one thing on this podcast, is something like that 400 people have picked up on something. You're like, I never even said that. I would envisage that what will happen is between now and when she gets up in the morning or whenever it is, I don't know if she's working shifts or whatever, somebody will have tweeted her, and then what that'll mean is with the time difference, it'll have already exploded on your timeline by the time that you get up, and your life will be worth shit, basically.
Great. So I'll wake. Well, that'll lead to a restful evening for me. Looking forward to the 63 mentions I'll wake up to tomorrow. But
actually, there was come to think of it, a Samaras Shevchenko related incident. The day we beat Hertz 5-0 at Celtic Park, when Hooper scored the 5 goals.
Yeah,
it was also the day that it was the same day Man City won the league, in the last minute, blah blah. And me and my mate was in Maggie Mays, and she was there. And my mate sort of slagged her off and was like, "Oh, Samaras done nothing," and she was like, "He set up like 3 of the goals." I didn't think so. And so then what happened then was Man City scored the 2 goals, and the pub was kind of going nuts, like, holy shit, they've won the league, this, that, next thing. And some people are cheering, some people are booing, and chaos last minute of the season. And I turned round, after all the furor had died down, and I turned round, and there was Shevchenko holding up a video of the game to my mate's face and pointing out the fact that Samaras had set up one of the goals. And I look at absolute fury on her face. And so that's what you've got to look forward to, Graham.
And that is, we talk about the fact that people have lost the personal touch and, everything's social media now. That was the capital letters, all, furious tweet in vivo, live, right in front of your face. Now, we love Shevchenko to pieces, and we just hope that she can get the sort of counseling and sort of moral support that she needs to get past this obviously very traumatic time for her. And maybe she can pick up a new player that gets pelters consistently, and she can adopt as or maybe she won't. Maybe she's going to be loyal to Samaras until the end. But all that remains to be seen.
I think she hates everybody, too much.
Well, she hates me.
No, but I mean players.
That's true.
She hates Charlie Mulgrew, and she's not that keen on Commons, but she despises Stokes. So, I think there's really much chance unless we sign somebody.
Well, fantastic. So that really flew by, Paul.
It did indeed. Have we got an inky punt before we go?
Some activities regarding the Green Brigade coming up. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, Green Brigade Saturday, Glencorner Park in Royston, 12 o'clock, anti-discrimination tournament and a food bank drive. Unfortunately, the statistics came out today, 2 million meals handed out in Scotland in the last few years for food banks. A disgraceful thing, but unfortunately this is the country we're living in until you vote yes. Simple as that.
Yep.
And so they're having an anti-discrimination tournament. It's very popular, different teams with different backgrounds, and they have food there and all that kind of thing. Go along and support the boys. I'm hoping to be there myself, take my son along, and that kind of thing, and support everything they're doing. And yeah, I mean, it's Glencorn Black and Royston, which is like 20 minutes from High Street Station. So 12 o'clock kickoff, all welcome.
Fantastic. And hopefully Lee Griffith, well, I know Lee Griffith's listened to this show religiously, no pun intended, I guess, but it'd be nice if he could turn up to that event as well. So Lee, get down to the Green Brigade and, make your amends.
Well, it's actually, one other thing I must mention, because again, it's just like, like I always try and tone things during the close season and not get involved in any stramashes or that. And a guy had said to me, there's a new book, would you mind reviewing it? And I'd do a blog about it, and it's called The First Game of My Father. And I knew nothing about this at all, but people, I've seen a wee dispatch in the Herald and whatever. And so I started reading it, and I was like, this is no bad. It's completely different. It's a wee bit like Tuesdays with Morrie, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And but the guy's father in it is a real character, like a real character. One of these guys reminded me a lot of my own father, always correcting you about, never, what do you mean Londonderry, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's always, and so I thought, this is good. This is going to be really good to write about this. And then turn the page, and what does the father accuse the son of being? A soup taker. Oof. And I just thought, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? Because it just seems like a super, like with his S-O-U. And I was like, oh God, here we go. But certainly, a book that I'm reading, and it's by a guy called Michael Tierney. Don't know the guy, no personal ties or anything like that. So, but, something that's a wee bit different, it's kind of like, the story is the guy, first game he went to was as a 15-year-old. His father took to him. It was Celtic Sport in Lisbon in 1983, I think it was. Won 5-0, come back for 2-0 down, and never went to the football again with his father, basically. And then when his father, then what happens in the early 2000s, his father has a stroke. And so that's kind of where the story starts to develop in that. But certainly, it's set in Bishop Briggs and all that kind of thing, that kind of way. So, but Glasgow, if you're from Glasgow, then you're going to relate to a lot of this story. And certainly, there's a lot of Celtic content in it, downloadable on Kindle, and you can buy it off Amazon and people like that. But it was different, I mean, it was I much prefer fan books than sort of autobiographies for players and so on and so forth, which, because there's kind of been a raft of them coming out recently, and so, they're all fine for picking up these stories, but this was something that I just thought, it's really for the heart of the guy, and I applaud the guy on this kind of subject matter, because, it's a subject matter, a style that I would be hesitant myself to touch, because I'm always of the opinion you have to keep it exciting, to get people interested, because why would they care? Why do they care about your own personal stories? And what he's done with this is it's not like a dramatically exciting book, but his style of writing and his method of writing and his quality of writing keeps you turning the page, basically, So it's a book I'd highly recommend, Graham.
Well, I've heard a lot of positive feedback about it, and as far as ringing endorsements go, that certainly tops the list, what you just shared. So I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it as well. So thank you for sharing that. And
apart from that, there's not really much else, is there?
The World Cup starts in 3 days.
Yes, my birthday's in 3 days.
Oh, fantastic! Fantastic. Any big plans for your birthday?
Yes, but being someone who's basically hated by most people in Scotland, I have to keep them secret until after I go.
Yeah, no revealing the plans on air, but we wish you a happy birthday. And everybody listening, make sure that you tweet Paul on Thursday and remind him or ask him how old he is. I'm sure that he would very much appreciate that.
Well, here's the thing, right? And let me put this out here, because this is something, I know in America it's different, and you actually like other members of your family. But
sometimes.
Like my auntie from America's coming over on Wednesday.
Oh, nice.
And, that's my mother's. Well, wait till you hear the story first. But and so it's like with my mother, it's her sister, right? So she's kind of like, oh, what you doing on Thursday? We'll take you out for a meal. And this is something that would never, ever happen had it not been for the fact that my auntie's there. So I think she's just trying to, like, you know, show off and whatever. Of course, it is kind of big birthday, whatever. But I was kind of like, well, no, I've got plans all day. So I was like, it'll need to be the Friday. And they want it to be the Friday night. But of course, there's 3 games on in the World Cup.
Right.
So I was like, so Friday lunch kind of thing. And, you know, the more I'm getting used to it, I'm just like, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this at all. I've got to admit it, like, because it's like, you know, both of them are in their 70s and they're quite young 70-year-olds, if you like. But I just think that, you know, in Scotland, it's, I think you either do the big family stuff or you didn't. And I've never really been that kind of person. I've always been sort of different. So, I don't know. I mean, what do you think about family dinners?
Well, it depends on, you know, the particular member of your family that you're having dinner with. I mean, you know, to use an example, I mean, you know, I'm from Philadelphia, and you know, you talk about things are different in America, but America's a big country, and different geographies and regions have different sort of ways of being, we'll just say. So, you know, the South Philadelphia sort of way of being tends to be more, you know, festered in conflict. So, you know, oftentimes, you know, especially with, you know, my mother's side of the family being of Irish, or of Italian descent, you know, there tends to be a lot of yelling, screaming, and you know, some bit of conflict, which is followed by you know, a hasty retreat from wherever it is that you're staying. But you know, if you're with, you know, members of your family that you haven't seen in quite some time, you catch up or whatever, and then, you know, that sort of runs its
well, I mean, it's that bad that me and James, my eldest son, had to actually plan where we were going to go so that it wouldn't piss her off anyway before it. You know, like if it was a 10-minute walk for the bus stop, she'd be raging before she got there. And, you know, all this kind of thing. More like that. I mean, because I remember taking her to Little Italy, Mulberry Street in New York, and it was like, go to a proper Italian restaurant. Oh, fantastic, I love Italian, that kind of thing. And she orders veal, and, you know, typical Italian, huge thing, and she went mental. Oh, that's too big. You know? And it's just like, well, you didn't fucking have to eat it all, but it's that kind of thing. And took her to the View in Times Square, which is at the top of the Marriott Marquis. For people who didn't know, it's at the top of the hotel, and it just revolves ever so slightly, so you get a view of the city, you know, Jersey, then, you know, South Manhattan, then, you know, so on and so forth. And we sit there, and she notices the fact that the thing's revolving, and she's like, do you think they know? I was like, think they know what? The fact that this place is moving. I was like, aye. That's a selling point, like, you know. But she's furious about that as well, and so, you know, it can be like, or it can be hard, you know what I mean?
It seems like it might be a little bit of hard work, you know, especially for your birthday.
Aye. So,
well, what would be the ideal way that you would spend your birthday, your day? Would you go for a walk along the Leith? Would you, you know,
no.
What would you do? Your ideal birthday?
It's not, well, actually, I'll tweet this tomorrow for the first time ever, but I've told you before that I've never really had a good birthday since 2006, which was actually, funnily enough, spent in Mulberry Street in Little Italy, where I had a meal with friends and drinks, and it was just one of the ones, you know, one of the meals. It didn't start out to be, oh, let's have a big party.
Right.
But we're doing there, and we're always drinking and eating, and it just went on for 5 or 6 hours. You know, it was fantastic. It was just the World Cup.
Yeah,
I think England were playing Trinidad and Tobago that day or something like that.
Yeah.
And it just went on, and it was brilliant. You know, it's like, if it could have lasted forever, then it could have. Following year, the girl that I was going out with at the time in New York was killed on the 10th of June, which was actually now, this time, in a motorcycle crash. And so I was in Scotland at the time, found out on my birthday that had happened, and because we weren't like seeing each other long or anything like that, so it wasn't like a big full-blown relationship type thing or whatever, and so that kind of hit me hard, and so every time, sort of since then, it's been my birthday, I've always kind of had that in my mind, you know what I mean, or I've always had kind of darker feelings, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, but this year I decided to do something a bit different, and so, which will probably involve an incredible amount of alcohol, and sort of let the place take care of the whole birthday event rather than me sort of saying, oh, let's do this and let's do that. Because what I used to do, and I didn't want to guess this to get a wee bit like Barbara fucking Walters here, but what I used to do was go to the cinema on my birthday, because that's where me and Carrie used to go to a lot. And so that was kind of my tribute. But as I say, it's no Barbara Waters, it's fucking 10 in a row. So I was like, nah, I'm 40, and I might drop down Deed when I'm, on June 13th. So I'm going to have a good time on Thursday. So I'll probably disappear on Thursday for a wee bit, and then relay the photographs, etc. when I come back, basically.
Well, fantastic. And, hopefully you give some sort of semblance of what is going on. Give us a progress report of some sort. We don't want to give away too much, but if you see Paul out on Thursday, make sure you buy him a drink, and unless he doesn't take to you, in which case get the fuck away. But we wish you nothing but the best for your birthday, and many further fantastic birthdays in the future.
Thank you very much. That's very nice of you.
Well, it happens from time to time.
Yeah. Not often, I say, but no. But no, I mean, it's, end of the day, I'm looking forward to the World Cup. Looking forward to a few things, getting away with my boys. The editing process of the Asterisk here starts.
I was hoping you'd share something.
On 21st of June, which is really exciting. It's like, because obviously I've got, I say mates, I would say associates who have got the same birthday as me, roughly, as at school and stuff like that. Oh, I've got a party, oh God. And then it's like, when is it? Oh, fuck, I can't, I'm working, in the editing. And so, meeting the editor and straight into the editing school, fancy, and straight into the editing suite, and, that's when it's going on. It's like, he said, oh no, we need you as part of this process as much as possible. And I was like, fucking hell, this is like really exciting. And by that time, hopefully, as you know, we'll have started to announce dates for the world tour, which is, incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
For me, I have to say, for someone, not just because of the film content and whatever, which is kind of hard enough, but for somebody who, effectively comes from fucking nowhere and has to done anything to actually be taking a film to people in America and so on, and Ireland and all that, it's really, really humbling. And it's, important to sort of smell the roses a wee bit on that, because, we've come a hell of a long way. And put up with a hell of a lot of shit in the course of it. So to actually get to that point, Graham, where it's like, and now we can take the suit to Scotland and Ireland and America and other places and all that, it's pretty exciting,
Well, I'll tell you what, the demand and the fanfare that you're getting is not for nothing. It's for a very good reason. It's for, all of the work that you've put in and the great effort and the product that you've put out. It's something that, there's a lot of excitement. I'm speaking for myself as somebody that's doing, some of the behind the scenes stuff over here. I know that there's, a huge clamoring and a huge excitement that's only just beginning to build. We over here in America, I'll speak for a lot of people. We can't wait for you to come over and, for you to introduce what you've done. It's a really important work. We are appreciative to you for what you've put up with, what you've done, and this end product. It's superb.
Yeah, it's been tentative discussions about venues and stuff like that, and premieres locked down, and sort of it's kind of like this was the point, and it's it's good because it's been a hard sort of slog, and I say by that time, by the time the film comes out, I've been doing it for 18 months, and it's been, there's been a lot of hard days involved in that, and a lot of long nights and things like that, and tough situations, and probably a lot of selfishness for me in respect of wanting to complete the project at the expense of maybe families' happiness or stuff that they went through and so on and so forth, and that's been a kind of hard road to go down. And similarly, people sort of dealing with my own issues and post-traumatic stress disorder and all that sort of thing, and then to have the pressure of this project and just the hard work that involves, because it's one thing people can never accuse me of as not being a hard worker. It's what I basically do. And then kind of having to deal with the sort of, I don't know what you would say, maybe the notoriety, I guess,
Well,
sort of surrounding it, basically, because it's like, it's no, as I said before, it's no like I'm not at the heated driveway stage by any stretch of your imagination, and I'm no famous. I mean, I'm probably, like Chris Rock says, there's famous and there's black famous, and I'm probably Celtic famous in the sense that, I mean, that basically means that you get people saying, "Oh, there's that cunt," and that's basically it. But and you kind of deal with all that, and you take it on board. I mean, but at the end of the day, people you wouldn't do these kind of things if you didn't like it as well. I mean, that's so the thing. And that's I guess what I'm trying to say is that once the kind of editing process gets done, then I'm hoping to actually start enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I have enjoyed a hell of a lot of it. But I've had to sacrifice a lot of it, and I've lost a few friends because of it who have just kind of drifted away, whatever it might be. And I want to sort of be able to then sort of kick back and enjoy it and go and take it around the world and tell people about it and kind of blast out there and say, look, this is a big strand of the story and stuff like that. And, we've got things that are being worked on right now in terms of the promotion of that and so on and so forth. We've got an absolute top quality editor and producer on board, which again, as I said before, is where the magic comes in. I've pointed the camera, and other people have pointed the camera at me and at other people and at different locations and so on and so forth. This is where the fucking magic comes into it. This is the David Copperfield coming in now and actually doing something with it. And, you see different types of documentaries. We had a great one on here the night about Jock Stein and BBC Alba.
Yeah.
That has its own kind of style. Ours is completely different, but it's going to be original as well. I mean, we're trying to do something original. I've really wanted to make sure that everything was original in it, and it wasn't just a kind of rip-off style of something else, because I've always tried to sort of, not just sort of, be inspired by certain things, but no sort of just be like, right, that's what we want, because I mean there is ways. I mean, because obviously you didn't have the budget to say, what would be great. We could just have like Fight the Power by Public Enemy at the start of this. You just don't got a budget to do anything like that. I mean, just to tell you right now, for to play the song Public Enemy, it would cost you $10,000 a minute.
Jeez.
Right, so that's the kind of level you're dealing with. So what you then say is you talk to people who are talented, who can write songs and music, and you say, I'd like a song that sounds like this song. Mm-hmm. Give me something, or I want something in that style. And again, that was a tip the producer gave me. We spent money on getting the rights to Fortunate Son, which wasn't even near as much as sort of Public Enemy or whatever would have been.
It's a great song, though.
Yeah, and then Claire Fowler, who sang it, is absolutely fantastic, and you'll hear a version of that in the film that you never heard initially. They'll have another twist on it, so, always like to twist something in. And so, of course, like anything you bring out and anything you bring in, you put your head above the parapet, you think, Christ, what if it's shit and whatever, and a bit, this is the different, because this isn't like a book or a podcast where with the book of we just sit here and we just talk and we just put it out there and we hope people like it. With a book, you write it and you just hope people like it. This is going to have different eyes on it. You know what I mean? This has got a critical, because the producer and the editor are no people who are like going to be like, oh yeah, they put their name on something, it's going to be good, or it's not going to go out. It's simple as that. Yeah. And so, I mean, they've got absolutely reams of footage, not just in terms of stuff that was shot by the crew, but in terms of stuff that came in from around the world and things that we've picked up and so on and so forth, and photographs and all that, because, I mean, you can't have too many photographs on a project like this, because, especially if the owner of the photographs gives you them. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because then if you don't, then you're into buying a photograph from Getty or whoever, Getty Images, and that's about 90 quid a photograph.
Right.
So if you want to have a fucking slideshow of photographs, just, do them off. It's extraordinary. So, aye. But at the end of the day, I mean, as I said, this story is about the Edinburgh establishment and kind of the places that they are and where they live and work, and so, use the term work loosely, and the advantages that they were able to give Rangers over us for 2 decades, and kind of why, what drove them, what was the reasons, what was the initial thing and all that kind of thing, put all that in, and it's again, it's kind of my story, but it's sort of their story really, and I'm just kind of telling it, you know what I mean, rather than there's nothing personal really in this to me, or it's not like the book where it was like, oh, and then we've done this and done that. It's not really like that at all. It's about them, and I'm just kind of telling it, you know. And it's good because with all the work that's been done for that, you find, you know, which was, you know, like in the last 3 months, it's been just non-stop, and to just, sorry, what day is this? Monday. Monday today is actually my first day off since February. And even then, it was kind of dealing with the film. So this has been actually the first day where I should be able to kick back. What's allowed me to do is get going with the children book thing that I'm doing, and also kickstart the next project I'm doing, which also will lift the lid on an organisation that thought they could cheat Celtic. And it's something that's no there now. It's something that's no universally known by anybody, and it's something that I've never seen anybody talk about, or anybody doing any research in blogs or anything like that. And hopefully, you know, that means that we can then just keep going with it and keep digging with it, and so that the organisation will not be on its guard, and then by the time they realise, we'll already be out there. And that's how we want to do it, you know.
And that's why we love the Green and White writer, because he never stops pushing, even on his day off. It's fantastic stuff. We can't wait for the finished product to come out. I mean, there's so much excitement around it. But before any of that, we have to get through 7 more 10inaRow shows. We're only 3 down. We've done 3 in a row. I think that's kind of appropriate for where we are now. Pushing on into the great...
When we aim for the next one? Friday? Saturday? Something?
Friday or Saturday will work for me.
Wow. Just hold on, Graham, right now. Just give me what... Sorry, I thought I heard the BMW you bought me for my birthday pulling up, but it wasn't. It was just a car. Because I would do a show tomorrow if there was content, but there isn't anything, unfortunately. Although, who knows? Yeah, I mean, it's actually, you know, this is a great thing about Celtic and doing these shows, Graham, is the fact that on last Thursday we were going to do the show, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden, bang, all the content just flew on that day, you know what I mean? And who knows, when they get an assistant manager or whatever, anything could happen.
I mean, we didn't even talk about Virgil van Dijk's new friend or anything. I mean, there's just so much content out there.
I mean, I'll just say one sentence on that. Football player shags gorgeous woman. It's no fucking a story. It really isn't, like. I'm sorry for his girlfriend and whatever, but, you know, it's got fuck all. It had nothing to do with me, and I really couldn't care less about it. Allegedly, he did all this. It was in the Sun. Who even knows if it did take place? But you're right, it is absolute garbage. So 7 more shows to follow. So hopefully you are enjoying the content that we're bringing you here. If you do, send out a retweet, or let other people know. Share it with everybody, and we're just trying to bring something to the support so we can cover not just the World Cup, but signings, players perhaps on their way out, or the new manager, who's going to be his assistant. There's so many things that are going to be developing over these next several weeks, and we will be here to bring it to you. And of course, the big question is, who on Twitter is next?
Exactly. No one is safe. So be on your guard and tweet selectively. We'll just say that. Well, for Paul Larkin, my name is Graham Wilson. Thank you so much for joining us once again. And we will catch up with you very, very soon. But for now...
Yes, I would just say goodbye, and I also want to say farewell, Rick.
Farewell, Rick. And hail, hail. And keep the faith. We'll talk to you soon.
You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, you just remember what your old past said. Boy, you got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got trouble, and I got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together, see it through, 'cause you got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. Some other folks might be a little bit smarter than I am, big and stronger too. Maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. It's me and you, boy, and as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me.